Welcome back to Gaming the System. This is the show where four intersectional feminists discuss gaming in all its guises through a feminist lens. This week, we are going to be talking about accessibility and disability in gaming. So there will probably be a lot of commentary that parallels with society at large, because so many issues that the gaming industry face are also shared by wider society. The message that society tends to send to anyone who isn't a cisgender, straight, white, able-bodied man with no illnesses whatsoever is that you don't belong here. This is not a space that belongs to you. And we add that into capitalism as well, that says if you can't work a 9-to-5 job, then you're essentially a drain on society and you're worthless. I wrote down that sometimes you can feel like a dead weight on society. It's terrible for your self-esteem, terrible for your self-worth. And yeah, as the gaming industry, it's not exempt. We've talked about this a lot. It's not exempt from any of the problems of society. So the first thing I wanted to talk with us about is the idea of, do you feel that games give you a sense that you belong? Either as, so I know some of us identify as having some sort of disability or mental illness. I have depression and anxiety and chronic pain. I was wondering if Alex, maybe to go first, do you feel like gaming is a space where the message is you belong?
I think certainly I do feel like that in a lot of ways, but I think looking back on how I felt in childhood, gaming was a way to not necessarily escape my disabled life, but it was to experience things without having to worry about my disability and how discrimination against me was impacting my day-to-day, or barriers in society were impacting my day-to-day. And obviously a lot of that has taken a long time to realise, because I only recently learned about the social model of disability, which is something that explains disability in a way that it's like something that society does to people. So you are disabled by society because of the barriers that are put in your way, whether they be physical, attitudinal, organisational, informational, etc. And it's not that the disability is the fault of the person, which you might have heard as the medical model of disability, which assumes that disability is a person's problem, that they need to be fixed, and that it's their issue to deal with and no one else's. So in a sense, I used gaming to kind of put my disability to one side and not have to think about it. So in that sense, I did feel like it was somewhere that I could belong, because I just put that part of myself to the side. But now, obviously, I think about myself differently, and I'm a lot more accepting of my disability as it being a part of me, because I know about the social model. And I think there is probably, I'm not represented one for one within gaming spaces, but yeah, I still feel like obviously it's a happy place for me to go, but I don't think disability is represented in the same way as other people are in games.
Yeah, because we mentioned before that if it's not like many things with women as well, if it's either not represented at all, or when the rare times that it is represented, it's not always a good thing. It's not always represented in a healthy way. So like people with scars and deformities are still often that's a marker that they're evil, or there's something wrong with them. So I think Caroline, you and I, we've both talked about we have depression and anxiety. Do you feel like gaming is a space where you can exist as a whole? Because illnesses are a part of you. They're not something that is bolted on and that you should view as an enemy. They're just part of your experience of life. Do you feel like you can exist in your gaming spaces with all parts of you?
Yeah, and I think there is, I think in some ways that the gaming is more of a space for people with mental health issues than it is for people with physical disabilities. I think it is more forgiving as a community in many ways, because for so many people, not that it couldn't be for people who have physical disability problems, but it is more because the games, consoles, etc., are so inaccessible. There are so many barriers that exist. Whereas for people where it's mental health, it's somewhere that you can escape to. It's somewhere that you can easily use that space to explore your emotions almost. I think you've spoken about this a bit, about that, having a space to explore those darker thoughts, those different behaviors as well and stuff like that. And I think that for me, it's always been somewhere where we talked actually last episode, 2 weeks ago, about how there are some nice gaming communities. And I think actually talking about your dark thoughts, your dark days, not having good days, not being able to cope is something that I've often found gaming communities are surprisingly good at and surprisingly supportive of, because there is a lot of people there who really do use it as a way to shut off from the world. And somehow that distance of a screen, that distance of typing on a screen or over a voice chat or just talking to a total stranger, because sometimes talking to a total stranger about your mental health is actually easier than talking to people you know. And I think sometimes the gaming community can create amazingly supportive spaces for that. I'm not as much into story games, as you guys know, and I know that sometimes the representations of mental health in story games is appalling and frankly horrifying, and the glamorization of addiction and all this sort of nonsense. I don't think the story games get it right, but I think the communities that exist in gaming communities actually are surprisingly supportive sometimes of mental health.
Yeah, I had a thought that was in response to what you were saying, probably because there are probably 5 shots of vodka that I had, so I forgot it instantly. So, and I wanted to, but I digress. The other thing that I wanted to respond to is that you said that there are communities where you can go into and they're supportive. Jen, you've said that there were times where you think you spent more time in the gaming world than you were out in the real world. And I was wondering if, is that because you felt safe there? Is it just it felt better than real world? Did it feel like it was a place where you as yourself could be welcome? Is that what you were using it for?
Yeah, I think I've used gaming and the escape of gaming as for many reasons over the years, actually. So, yeah, I mean, I think it became an environment where my friends were. So that's where I went to hang out with my friends. So instead of going and hanging out down the pub on a Friday night, I'd go on and game on a Friday night, because that's where I would talk to my friends, find out how their week had gone, download my week. And I was at uni, and then later I was working. So it's not like I wasn't having a real life outside of this gaming world, but I was also going to this gaming world. This was where I hung out with my friends. So for me, it was definitely an environment to engage with a group of friends who I was meeting from all over the world. And I think also it was a space where I felt more able to explore different aspects of myself. And I think that over time, a lot of what was going on in my sort of real world bled into my online world. So it wasn't a pure escape. It's not, they're not two completely different separate bubbles, I think. And maybe if you have your spare time and you go away and you do this, it can be more of a bubble. But when it becomes so fused with your day-to-day life, as my gaming experience did at points in my life, I'm not sure that I think that the two bled into each other quite a lot. So there was a lot of crossover going on and all sorts of interesting things, which sounds a lot more exciting than it actually was. But yeah, so I think, yes, I definitely used it as a space where I felt more relaxed and felt more comfortable, but it wasn't always an escape, and it wasn't always a positive.
One thing that I'm finding increasingly positive about this space that we've created, and something I'm trying to do in my life, is to be able to be my one authentic self everywhere I go. And from the sounds of it, that's what you were trying to do with your gaming, being in that world. You don't be one person in the real world and be another person in your gaming world, another person at your job. That's what so many people do. They just change who they are depending on the situation they're in, because that's what society pressures them to do. So that's what I hope that gaming should offer to everyone. This leads on quite well into thinking how so illness and disability make up parts of you, whoever you might be. They're part of your authentic self, part of your authentic experience. And a lot of the time, say with a 9-to-5 job, you're expected to cut off that part of yourself and fight against it. So I can't work a normal 9-to-5 job because of my illnesses. So I work a gig work as a delivery driver. And I make plenty of money, and it's a lot of fun, and it completely accounts for my illnesses. So that means that I can be my authentic self, go straight from just lying in bed to going out working, and I'm still me. And that's fine. But there's a lot of stigma that's attached to just existing as you are. So if you go to work and say, I can't work today because I'm having a terrible depression day, then the overall message I've always felt is that you're worthless, and that why would the company hire you because of this? You're weak and you're less powerful because of this. And thinking about when this applies to games, you say, I want to play this game on easy, for example. This is a massive thing, a massive trend. People who play games on easy are losers and weak and pathetic. And so, yeah, and but you can have a lot more fun, and some people just don't like games, and it's just about your experience, about your authentic experience. So people will tell you, oh, you're a loser if you play on easy, or you go, well, authentically me, I feel like playing on easy and I enjoy it so much more, so fuck you. Fuck you and your standards.
This argument, I argue about this of RimWorld a lot. Because my partner always plays RimWorld on one of the much higher difficulties, because he's like, well, no, but you've got to make progress. You've got to progress. And I'm like, I like playing it on Builder. I like Builder. That's what I like out of RimWorld. That's what I get, is that I'm making a whole little community that works. So yeah, completely recognise that.
It's such an interesting discussion. I remember, I think it came up like a year or two ago. One of my favourite gaming channels on YouTube, Funhouse, had a whole podcast on that very issue, about whether playing on easy makes you less of a gamer because you're playing on easy. But if it's an option in the game, like, it's an option in the game at the end of the day. So it's designed for all different people to play however they like. And that's the beauty of games, is that you can play them however you like. So you shouldn't be judged for playing it how you want.
Yeah, and there's always so much shame in taking the easier route.
Yeah.
You should try to do it as hard as possible. Jem, you mentioned in the WhatsApp earlier about talking to your husband, who said he was deaf in one ear.
Yeah.
So thinking about, I found this quote from a man called Josh Straub, who's an accessibility consultant who works in the gaming industry, and he says that there are 4 areas of accessibility. It's fine motor, auditory, low vision, and color blindness. So, and saying how it's about fixing things on a granular, it's not about fixing things on a granular scale, it's about addressing the bigger issue. So, you said you haven't had much personal experience, but did he share anything about you of his experience with gaming and his issues?
Yeah, I mean, for him, it means that stereo sound doesn't work. So if you're playing, I mean, I played a game years ago that was just profoundly a profound experience for me, called Thief, and they did sequels which weren't as good, but the first one was amazing, and most of the game was creeping around, and you had to listen out for guards and things that you were doing, and the whole game was actually not about killing as much as you could. It was about avoiding getting into combat, but it was done by directional sound. And I was speaking to my husband about it earlier, and I was saying, you know, he was like, well, I wouldn't have been able to play a game like that. You know, he has a special mixer on his headphones so that it puts the sound all through one ear. But it's really difficult to get this kind of stuff, actually. And given how many people, I mean, there's a huge amount of people that suffer from this either hear it full loss or partial loss in one ear. So for there to be so little support for it is quite shocking, actually. I looked into it for him because I was going to get him this. I bought him this mixer because I was like, you have to experience games. But he said, well, okay, you know, this is who I am. This is how I am. He was born this way, so you know, it's all he's known. So his view was like, there are just some games I can't play. There are just some games, and you know, Thief would have been one of them. There are just some games that I can't play, and he's okay with that, because there are lots of games that he can play, and there are other games that are not massively affected by this issue. And so he doesn't view it as a disability or a problem. I mean, he just views it as that's who he is, like we said. So that's it. So he just accepts that there are some things that he can't do, and that's all right, because there's lots of other things that he can do, and for the most part the games, there is a solution for it. You can get these mixers, and so, but you know, I really wanted to get surround sound for the TV, but there's just no point really, because he's the one that's more fussy. I mean, he's incredibly fussy about what he listens to and how and what the sound level is and everything. So, you know, I think it did sort of open my eyes to the fact that, you know, sometimes there are just some things that, but I think that's the case for all of us. I don't think it necessarily is about ability or disability. I think there are just some things, like I really want to play VR games, but I have quite severe motion sickness. So I really struggle with that. And I think it's something I was so excited to do. And I'm okay as long as I'm just sitting still and I don't move around anywhere. But I can't play, you know, anything that involves running around for more than about 5 seconds. So
I think you're right there about the options, because I think, Matt, just what you were saying there about it's not granular, it's like a whole thing. It's when there is a game that does not have this. I mean, basically, when we load up a game, especially if you're a PC gamer, the first thing you do is you go to the settings menu. And you have to spend at least half an hour on the visual settings, the audio settings, the control settings. And the control settings, and as you say, the audio and visual settings, are where a huge amount of changes can be made to adapt for anybody, whoever they are, whatever it is, issues that you have. I always have subtitles on everything. I have subtitles on TV. I have no hearing problems, but I find it improves my concentration and it improves my comprehension. So I always have subtitles on. So games where that's not an option, instantly out, or games where I have to wait until the first cutscene is finished or skip it, because that also drives me nuts. But, you know, other little things, when you were saying about the motion sickness, I actually have that quite often. If I haven't played Rust or 7 Days or any of those first person games for a long time, when I go back in, feel very sick. And things like anti-aliasing settings, and sort of there's lots of things you can do in the display settings that actually, with your field of view and all other things, that can make it work for you. And that's me as somebody without disability. I can imagine that, you know, there are many adaptations that can be made to games, and all it needs is to be a standard across. I've even had a game once where you couldn't switch between the invert y-axis.
Oh yeah.
What kind of madman, you know, that's one of the defining arguments, is whether you play with an inverted control system or not. And yet there's this game where you couldn't change it. I was like, how will we cope? It's fine for Oscar because he plays the opposite way to me.
You just made me think about how. So, Jem, you were saying that you struggle with motion sickness, and it just reminded me of what being able-bodied and being disabled is defined as. It seems like it's defined as a very black and white thing, but the truth is, everyone could become like disabled at any point.
Exactly.
Like tomorrow, you could be hit by a car, and then all of a sudden, you can't use your hands anymore, and then your gaming is, like, because of the way it's structured for able-bodied people, it's gone for you. And
I think also as you age as well,
saving me.
Yeah, sorry. As you age as well, obviously, you're more likely to acquire. I don't want to use the term acquire a disability, but essentially your body's degenerating, so you're more likely to pick up hearing loss, sight loss, loss of mobility, loss of fine motor skills, etc. So as you age, I guess you're gradually pushed out of things that non-disabled people would be able to do much more easily.
Yeah, on a very low level point, I've been having real trouble with my forearms recently, and it's a nerve thing. If you slump, it stretches all the nerves that stretch from your spine into your arms, and it gives you really bad pain. And it's like repetitive motions do that, bad for it. And I had to change a setting on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because a button that you press constantly is the right analog stick to do your eagle vision. And it's just like, what idiot made you press this fighting the button that fights back all the time? So I had to change that option. Are there any options that you three change as a rule of thumb that make a game more, to say the keyword accessible, or in a way that makes the game easier and more enjoyable for you? I'll start with Jem.
I probably turn up the contrast, because I don't know, but whenever it's set to what they want it set to, I can't see anything when I'm in a dark room, and I don't think it's like any specific like disability with my eyes, I think it's just the way that they work it. But yeah, I think it's usually the contrast, it's usually the light balance. I did also find I started playing Greedfall the other day on the PlayStation 4, because I don't have a PS5, and I really struggled to read the text. And I had moved my sofa like really close to my TV, because that's how I have to play these days.
It was so small. I was so angry. Yeah.
So yeah, and I think it would be really good if there's a way to like make that bigger. And I do always have the subtitles on. Sorry, I've just done a big list.
No, good.
Have you got any thoughts, Alex, on
I will add to that. Those two things are definitely things I also do in games. I also find it really irritating how small the text is. Like I have to wear my glasses all the time, and even with them I can't read it. I'm just like, I can't, it's too far away. But also, obviously I should have clarified before I started talking, my main issue is probably my fine motor skills because of my cerebral palsy. So with things like button presses and taps for quick time events or QTEs, if I can, get them to go to solid presses rather than taps, because taps are quite fatiguing for my fingers. One of the games I've played just recently, which is when I realised why I don't play fighting games, is because it made me so fatigued after like one round of fighting. I really enjoyed it, but my hands were dead after. Like that was Mortal Kombat 11. And I wonder if there's a way of making those types of games where obviously quick button pressing, quick reactions, and where your adrenaline's up because you want to win the fight, that makes me more tense, and therefore I hold the controller tighter and I get cramp, as well as getting fatigued. So I don't know if there's a way around making fighting games or games that require a lot of button pressing more accessible. Maybe it is just one of the types of games that I can't play, and I can accept that, that's fine. But yeah, I do wonder whether there is a way around that.
We talk a lot about how the idea that we think about esports, that any game could be played competitively and it could be fantastic. I watched the Scrabble World Champions on YouTube, so people will watch anything.
Yeah.
So I'm certain that as I say, with accessibility, there is a way. If the people making it care to find out, then they will find a way. Caroline, I don't think you got to answer anyway. What kind of ways do you change the way you play games to make it better for you?
Firstly, I agree with everything Jem says. Life's too short to play in dark rooms. So the second it's like, adjust this until you can only barely see it. Right. Yeah. Change that. And the button bashing was making me think about there is a certain type of, shall I say, male in his mid-40s who's so proud of the fact that they could win those old games in the 80s where you had to button bash as fast as possible. I wonder if there's like an institutional thing in games. But for me as a PC gamer, my main thing is about preventing injury. And like genuinely, Matt, you were saying there about the repetitive injuries and stuff. I mean, it is, we mock and sort of, gaming injuries, but genuinely, it is important you have an ergonomic setup. It is important you have your monitors at a good height. It is important you have a supportive chair because you are going to do that. And my favorite thing I got recently, so it's less a setting and more of a thing, and I'm not trying to get free products here, but it wasn't cheap, which is I have an ergonomic keyboard now. And so this is raised so that I've got somewhere to rest my wrists on while I'm WASDering and doing all the rest of it. And I actually have found it's made a huge difference in terms of wrist pain. And like if I've been playing hours of just constantly out here, it's because obviously mouse and keyboard gameplay, I think a lot of console gamers, not insulting console gamers, I just want to be clear, but it is a very different shooting setup. And when you are constantly prowling, looking around, making sure no one's about to attack you in a constant alert state with your hands clamped like this over a keyboard and a mouse, it's genuinely, quite painful. And I have a strong family history of arthritis on both sides. And what I don't want to, it was interesting what you were saying, Alex, about, we're all aging.
Yeah.
And I want to still be able to game when I'm 85. I don't know why I chose 85, 95, 105. Let's all hope for the best. But I do want to still be able to game. And I would hope that I haven't broken myself, but also that that games will allow me to, that the accessibility leaps will be happening, that mean that I can adjust to whatever my body's done by then.
You've just brought in a fantastic point that, how the patriarchy is fucking abominable to our health. Because the patriarchy says that you need to be strong and masculine. It's something that's having a fucking terrible impact on America, is that saying if you're strong and manly enough, then you don't need to take COVID precautions. Because I'm such a big, strong, awesome, manly man, I can't possibly get sick. So that message says that you don't need ergonomic stuff. You can just sit however you want because you're a manly man. But you should just throw that out the window and go, I'm going to have a comfy chair and I'm going to exercise. I'm going to sit in good posture and I'm going to be gaming well into my hundreds while you're dead of COVID, you knobhead.
I want to say I'm not 100% behind that wording, but I agree with the sentiment.
It's the vodka talking. Don't worry. So we'll move on to that point. I don't think it's a segue, but we know about industries in general, about how difficult it is for women to make their way in, how difficult it is for disabled people to make them in. Anyone who isn't cisgender, straight, white, able, but I think we've said that a million times in the last 2 hours. Where does the gaming industry in particular fall short of getting women and disabled people in? Do you have any thoughts on that, Alex?
I can tell you some interesting stats from a disability perspective. I have them here, if you bear with me. just about work in general, not specifically the gaming industry. And I have sourced them from leonardcheshire.org, where they have a bunch of facts and figures. This is actually quite an old stat, but it's still quite hard-hitting. At the age of 26, disabled people in the UK are 4 times more likely to be out of work or not in education compared to non-disabled people. A quarter of employees, so about 24%, say they would be less likely to employ someone with a disability. And 66% of employers say costs of the workplace adjustments are a barrier to employing a disabled person. So that's things like access to work, where you can get adaptions and things like ergonomic setups to help you within the workplace setting. So even though those stats are quite old, they're probably obviously a little bit different, but mostly the same about now. And it just kind of shows how the barrier to disabled people getting into the workplace is just quite large. So perhaps a lot of sectors just don't take advantage or tap the talent that is waiting and ready to come into the workplace there, because obviously there's a whole plethora of jobs within the gaming industry. It's not just making games, designing games. It's also thinking about ergonomics, like we said, maybe designing controllers, designing gaming chairs. It could be about, I don't know, maybe game design, if you look at maybe illustration and artwork, or game narratives and storytelling and that sort of thing. So there's just like a whole bunch of ways to break into the sector. And it's about thinking about in what ways can disabled people bring in their perspectives and make it better for everybody as a whole, not just one particular set of people.
You draw such a brilliant parallel between both disabled people and I was thinking about women who get pregnant while they're working.
Exactly.
Women are viewed as a liability. Disabled people are viewed as a liability because they think they're just a drain on the resources of something that you're doing them a favour, rather than viewing it as what you're bringing attention to is that they are a source of brilliance. The same sort of brilliance that they think comes from cisgender, straight, white, able-bodied men. Any disabled people, pregnant women, that brilliance is what you want. So you should be wanting to welcome them in. Do you finding any perspective on how the gaming industry is accessible to people? Carolyn, I should have said your name at the start so you could think about what to say.
It's a common problem I do, although sometimes I just do it to freak you guys out. But no, I think just on what you say, it's not just when women become pregnant, it's just the fact that we're women that employers see us as a liability because we might become pregnant. I mean, my very first job interview when I was 18, I was asked about, well, are you planning on getting pregnant anytime soon? Which was illegal.
Yeah.
I've been asked that before.
It was illegal then.
It's inconceivable to me to think of that. So,
again, it was, it's considered standard because, and the ridiculousness of it, and I'm going to quote Dr. Hannah Barron Brown here because, frankly, I have to listen to her enough anyway, but no, it's fine. Her TED Talk, which she does brilliantly talk about this, is that employers should be employing disabled people because they are problem solvers, because they have had to overcome these issues. They are people who know how to overcome these issues. I was repeating this the other night when I was talking to my partner about, because this is how middle class and old I am. I was watching Gardener's World. And there's a woman who mostly gardens with her feet, and she was explaining because of her disability, this is how she gets by. And I was saying, the way that she will see the world in terms of overcoming problems, I mean, she's so much more talented and has 100 more skills to offer than most people do because she's already having to do that problem solving. And I feel in this world now, frankly, unless you are something like a doctor where you physically have to touch people, where's she going with this? There is no reason you can't do a job remotely. And I've been saying this for years. I've been working flexible part-time from home since 2016. And it's brilliant the rest of the world has caught up with the fact now, and I'm actually getting more work now because people are like, oh, you can do this remotely. Oh, we can employ you and you can do this at the same time. I'm able to work in a way that works for me. I have friends who can't work if they have to set an alarm, for example. That triggers their insomnia and anxiety. And so being able to set their own hours is what allows them to be more productive. For me, being able to juggle different tasks throughout the day and spend an hour on this job, an hour on that job, helps me be more productive. And I think it's all about recognizing that the gaming world needs more more diverse people involved in it. Possibly more interesting, because if you're more diverse, you are going to be more interesting generally. And these barriers, these false barriers, I mean, we've seen it in so many industries over the last year where I'm going to say they are men quite often, who their main job over the years seems to have been in a management role to just walk around an office and boss people around and organise meetings about meetings and say stuff. They don't really do much. And I think they have found this last year very difficult because when everyone's just at home being productive remotely, their job has no meaning anymore because they don't, frankly, they had no meaning before, but at least they felt important because they were walking around an office and bossing people around. And I think those are the people who exist in industries as a barrier to working in different ways, including different people, because they don't see it as work. They don't see it as how it should work. Anyway, that's me.
Yeah, Jem, do you feel there's that parallel in the gaming industry that you see with the general theme of society?
I think that yes. I mean, I think there's always a parallels between the gaming industry and society, and I think Alex really hit the nail on the head at the start of the session when she was talking about social
model. Sorry,
social model.
Yeah,
which I have heard about, and it's one of those things that kind of comes into my brain and then disappears again. But it's so important, actually. This idea that you know there are practical issues to disabilities, and you know, like my husband's hearing loss, that has a practical issue, or my need for glasses, you know, these are practical issues, but society is then adding another layer on,
exactly,
causing all of these problems for, you know, just compounding the problems that are already there. And, you know, we've all talked about how important diversity is in everything, because it just makes everything more encompassing and more fun. And I think that as a society, we should be embracing these issues rather than seeing them as just problems to be surmounted. You know, that the norm, as we talked about earlier, is something that we're all trying to get to, and everything is just something to be fixed. You know, sometimes things aren't to be fixed. I had a very long conversation with my husband about this the other day, actually, about, you know, that we're always talking about, you know, like things like, say, autism, you know, that's something that is a problem, is a thing to be fixed, a thing to be managed. But actually, it's just a personality trait, really.
A different way of looking at things.
Yeah, it has a whole heap of issues around it that need to be considered, but you know, we don't need to think of it as an illness that needs to be solved, or a problem that needs to be solved. And I've done quite a lot of writing for a occupational health company, and a lot of that has been about well-being, and a lot about you know, like how to make workplaces more
inclusive,
friendly, really.
Yeah.
and it's always about, you know, what are the problems and how do we do it? And the companies are always saying, oh, we've got to spend money on this. This is too much hassle. This is too difficult. And yet all of the evidence says that, you know, that happy, healthy, engaged employees are more productive. They will earn you more money. They will be off sick less. They will be more engaged. They will be more involved. And I think this is the thing, is yes, you may have to facilitate. You may have to add in extra programming to facilitate computer games, but then you're going to sell a load more games to a whole bunch of people who before were excluded. So I do think we need to change our attitude really on the whole inclusion and exclusion. I don't know if that answered your question.
I'm just going to jump on the end of that point. Also, once you've done the initial legwork to get support in place and equipment in place, that's going to be there then for the next person that comes into the role. And also just to add about access to work, a lot of it is down to a lack of awareness. I've got a stat here about senior business leaders having concerns about recruiting a disabled person to a senior role. Only 11% said they would not have any concerns. And the main reason given was that they were apprehensive about recruiting disabled people because they felt that making necessary adjustments to the working environment would cost a lot of money. This was despite the average cost of reasonable adjustments being just £75, according to research, and that was from The Independent in 2019.
It's all that bullshit of saying what could we possibly do? No, it's
just going to cost too much money. It's too much hassle. We're not going to bother. But actually, if you put the work in and build up your awareness of what support is available and what adaptations there are by speaking to people with lived experience who know about these things, then you'll have that in place and it will benefit a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. Education and support is obviously key there, because this is employers thinking, oh, this is going to cost a fortune, and the reality is no, it's not. And obviously I think the onus should be on employers to go out there and find out that it's not, but clearly they're not doing that. So there's a need to expand the knowledge base, really, isn't there? And the way you do that is you get more people into these businesses so that they go, oh, well, we employed Rosie and, that was all fine, so now it's not a problem. And I think, the more people that you can get involved who have various disabilities, then the more businesses can see that actually they can afford, and they get so much more back from it.
Yeah, the idea that disabled people are broken and that there's something to be accommodated is so profound and horrifying. Have any of you heard of the comedian called Jess Tom? She's a comedian who uses a wheelchair, and she's got Tourette's. And she spoke about one time when she went to see a play, and because she had Tourette's, she was just wheeled out and put in like an audio cupboard. Then watched it on the film.
That's horrible.
And I can't imagine that. I'm just thinking you're something to be wheeled away, something to be ashamed of. So I think that's what we're talking about. And it's not about accommodating. It's about building a place where not only is everyone welcome, everyone is comfortable. A place where you make reasonable adjustments. That's just just add a little bit. And you think if you've got if you open yourself out to 100% of the people who could work in your field, then you can take the best of that, no matter what the stripe they may be. But if you go, I'm only going to go with the able-bodied, the people who look like me, the people who I like the look of, you're going to end up with a large percentage of the mediocre people who are going to provide mediocre results. So I think we'll go with... I think we've got time for one more question, and then we'll go on to the wild card. When we have a massive problem with patriarchy, and particularly with men, and we're seeing this with a lot of like the not all men movement, the people who come about go when it's International Women's Day, go, oh, what about International Men's Day? Or the contrarian people who just, they don't care. And the way you get people to care is to foster empathy for people who you don't understand their experience. So I'm wondering is there a way that through gaming we can foster that sense of empathy? Because like we were saying earlier, anyone can be disabled at any time. And people just don't think about it because it's a horrible thing to think, oh, if I was in a car crash. But I think with my minor forearm problems, I was thinking, shit, what if I got hit by a car and I couldn't use my hands anymore? That would rob me of the gaming world that I rely on to give me so much positivity. Caroline, can you think of ways that through gaming we can foster that sense of empathy?
I think that it's when you say through gaming, I think one of the joys of gaming is because of the immersive nature of it, through telling good stories, through telling good events and making people feel in worlds, there is an opportunity for fostering empathy. And I mean, I'm very aware that for years I was shit on supporting disability and understanding the depth, and I think so many people are, the depth of barriers that exist to the disabled community in this country. And I mock her all the time because she's a lovely friend, but Dr. Hannah Barron-Brown was hugely influential in this changing, because in 2019, her and I ran an election campaign together in Leeds, and she was candidate, I was running the campaign, and suddenly everything I thought I knew about running a campaign was different. I couldn't send the candidate up to knock on people's front doors because Hannah's wheelchair isn't going to get up to most people's front doors. In fact, most people's front doors are up some steps behind a gate. They have gravel that's not very good unless you have one of a really super swanky chair. Didn't realise as well in those days that, Hannah had to crowdfund for her first wheelchair and has spent years saving up for her later ones. The fact that you don't just get a super swanky wheelchair if you need it.
No one just gives you a wheelchair.
No. Well,
yeah,
you could appeal to charities, but that's charity. So.
Yeah, but it's like, if you want to get a really cool one, like, Hannah's is basically like Dr. Charles Xavier's. So,
I know, it's fancy, isn't it?
And we would go to pubs, we would organise, let's all meet up at a pub so that voters can come and talk to the candidate. And of course, no pub is accessible. Finding a properly accessible pub, or you will ring up the pub and they'll say, yeah, we are accessible. Turns out they have a ramp that they haven't taken out of a cupboard for 15 years. Nobody knows how to operate. Or on one occasion where they had an electric thing, they actually got Hannah stuck in it. We were trying to leave the pub and they couldn't get the key to turn it down, and they just said, oh, hang on, we'll be back, and walked off. And so for 15 minutes, Hannah and I were just standing next to a wheelchair lift going, well, this is shit. And when we actually went to the council for the briefing and said, is the council chamber accessible? We were told, nobody's ever asked us that before. Now, obviously, you're like, what's this got to do with gaming? And I think the point is that the same is true of gaming. I know people who said to me, I've never been able to game because of my cerebral palsy. It was somebody else who said that the controllers have never worked for me. And there are some great organizations out there doing their bit to try and make it work. But the social model of disability is so powerful because it's saying, it's not that you're putting these barriers up. You as a society are putting these barriers up. So I think the way that gaming can help is to look at what barriers are we putting up.
Yeah. Jem, do you feel like gaming feeds into your empathy, like for other people?
Yeah, I think the great thing about gaming is that it gives you the opportunity to play as somebody else, to literally walk in somebody else's shoes. So I think there is so much scope within games to help us to understand what life is like for other people and what life is like as for somebody different from ourselves in a way that we just can't. And I think, that doesn't just have to be about providing diverse characters, but that would be my starting point, would be to provide the opportunity to play and experience life in many different ways in a game, but it's also about having the opportunity to role play in a game, and role play is I think some people feel a bit like ooh about it, because I think most people have come across it in uncomfortable scenarios where you're having to role play out something in the workplace or at school or something like that. And I think or it's like really geeky because it's people dressed up with elf ears and great big swords and things like that. So I think there's a bit of a discomfort about it. But when I used to game, I played different characters and I explored different aspects of my personality and the ways that I wanted to be, and I could go on and I mean, one of my characters that I played in World of Warcraft, I did an entire blog based on her experiences and how she viewed the world. And although she didn't have any disabilities, she was a little gnome, so she was tiny, and she hung out with an elf warrior who was enormous. And a lot of the stories that we talked about were about the size difference and the experiences of him being this big and her having to keep up and hiding in places where he couldn't fit and she couldn't, and all of this. And so it gave me an opportunity to explore what life would be like in this completely fictional character. And I think so from an empathy perspective, I think it's a really good way for us to, just like reading gives us the opportunity to explore other people's lives. I think gaming gives and it because our emotional response doesn't recognize that it's just pretend. The more engaged we can get in a game, the more we can feel it. So then we can feel in our core what it's like to be this person. And no, it's never going to be exactly the same as that person's experience, but it might give us the ability to look at them and go, hey, do you know what? I might make my workplace a bit more accessible for these people. I might consider what it might be like not to be able to see or to have a mental illness or, whatever. There's all sorts of things. And I think it just gives us, there's a huge scope that can already be explored within the existing games, but could also be factored in when people are designing games going forward.
Yeah, Alex, is this something you're finding, that empathy is something that gaming has allowed you to cultivate more, and that thinks that it could cultivate someone to your experience of life?
I certainly think so, yeah. I'm going to mention a couple of things. There was an indie game that came out, or is coming out recently, about you play as a woman with Alzheimer's. I forget the name, but it looks really good. So I'd build on that sort of model and maybe look across the whole spectrum of disability, because obviously, just because I have cerebral palsy doesn't mean that I automatically understand every disability there is and what life is like for, say, a visually impaired person or a deaf person or a person with a learning disability. I have no idea. And I need to do more to rectify that and become more aware of what their lives are like day to day. On the flip side of what Jen was saying, looking at how gaming lets us live different lives and have different experiences, part of the thing I was referencing earlier about putting my disability to the side, when I was younger, I suppose I had a lot of internalized ableism where I didn't like that part of myself. So I used gaming as, like, when I was playing as Lara Croft, for example, I could be a person that runs around and jumps and climbs stairs and shoots people and does all this amazing physical stuff. And it helped me to feel, in some sense, that I could leave that part of myself behind. But I think if we could make games that could show the experience of disability in more of a real way, in the way that this indie game, whose name I've unfortunately forgotten, does quite well from the sound of it, then it would be an excellent way of exploring disability and understanding disability. Certainly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think it's time for our wildcard round, but I am dangerously near going to the toilet. So I'm going to quickly run to the toilet,
Okay. And
then we'll come back and do the wildcard round.
Yeah.
the beauty of the pre-recorded one.
Well, I'm going to then as well.
Okay.
I don't need to, but I'm going to go fill up my wine.
Okay, I'll just be here.
What? I'm back first?
Mhm.
Fine. Everybody decided to take a break, Matt. So
Yes, that was I definitely wouldn't have made another 10 minutes.
no, don't worry. I completely sympathise.
Too much alcohol.
A receptionist and then a teacher means that I did have to develop an iron bladder on many occasions, but...
Okay, shall we crack on?
Wild card.
Bring this thing home. First off, is there anything that Matt has forgotten to say that any of you would want to bring up? Okay, cool. So here we go. The home straight, the wild card question that no one has seen other than I. The question is, what video games would you recommend that are best for someone who has never played a video game before but wants to get stuck in? This is a very selfish question because I'm trying to get my mum to play Metal Gear Solid 5. But with the controllers, it's the controller. It's exactly like learning to drive. So you can't. So it's like I'm asking her to drive from here to Poland on the first time she's ever sat in a car. Whereas you need to drive around a cul-de-sac in a nice, no pressure scenario. So what games do you recommend for someone to cut their teeth with? And I'll start with Caroline.
Oh, okay. Well, so because when you said what game would you recommend, I was like, oh, maybe something like Her Story that's not really a game and stuff. And then I was like, well, no, for what you're searching for, Matt, you're looking for something that's going to get somebody to use a controller. So the first of all, and also I often think a lot of people recommend Her Story to people who haven't gamed before. Have any of you guys played Her Story?
Mm-hmm. No.
Right.
But I
so
should.
For those, Jem knows what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't, it's nothing like any game you've ever played before, and you shouldn't spoiler it for people, and you should play it because it's amazing. But actually, it's a rubbish game for getting people into gaming because it's nothing like any game you've ever played before. So what my answer to you, Matt, would be, believe it or not, I'm going to say Overcooked. Right.
I was going to say Overcooked.
Aha, you have to think in your answer. But I do think that Overcooked is such an accessible game. I think during the pandemic, a lot of people have played it with a lot of people. It's probably the only cooperative game that me, my brother, and my partner managed to all play without killing each other. I'm not saying there's never been an Overcooked argument for that. But the controller setup is very intuitive and very accessible, I think. And it's one of those things that gets people used to holding a controller, using a controller to move around and to operate things. And it's just a huge amount of fun. So, Overcooked.
Intriguing. I'll pass that on. Jen, what would be your recommendation that isn't Overcooked?
Well, I was thinking Overcooked. No, no, I absolutely agree with Caroline. I think Overcooked is really good. My daughter suddenly decided that she was going to stop playing Just Dance the other day, and she was like, I want to play, and we were like, what do you want to play? And she was like, I want to play Disney Infinity. And we haven't played Disney Infinity for ages. I mean, the Xbox is there, it's all plugged in, but it wasn't plugged into the TV because we had run out of slots for it. So basically we had to plug it all in and make it all work and find all the pieces. But Disney Infinity is a great game because it's Disney. So it's characters that you know and love, and there's fighting games and there's exploring games, and there's a sort of toy box, which is like a sandbox world, so you can build stuff. So it's it's aimed at younger people, so it's very intuitive, very easy, very hand-holdy way of getting to use it. But in the end, you can end up doing the sort of button mashing that you might need in more complicated games. But it's, unfortunately, I think it's not even being supported anymore because I think Disney decided that they wouldn't do it. But I'm sure you can still get hold of it. But it is, I mean, we have it on the Xbox. I'm sure you can get it on the PlayStation. You don't have to hate it, Matt. I think it's available on multiple platforms. We just happened to have it on the Xbox. But also the little figures that come with it, because you place figures in to decide what you're going to play, are awesome. They are so nicely designed. They're like collectibles in their own right. And my daughter got them out the other day, and she had loads, and I'd forgotten how many we had and how many she liked them, and she got them all out. She laid them all out. So she was playing it when she was 8, and she picked it up again the other day. She's 13. So, it's clearly a timeless game, and it was really fun to watch.
Talking about Xbox, I was thinking of doing an April Fool where I said I thought the PS5 is actually quite underrated. So I sold it and bought an Xbox One instead. But I couldn't even bring myself to say the words.
Carry it
off. The main games that I got playing were puzzle games like The Witness and Talos Principle. Talos Principle? Talos something.
It's Talos Principle.
Talos Principle, I think it is.
Now I'm doubting myself. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, me too. Someone in the chat will correct us when it eventually goes live. And The Witness, I'm really proud of. We've got to the top of this flower tower, and I solved it, but now I can't remember how I solved it. So that's as close as I've been able to. That's as close as I've been able to come. Alex, what do you think my mum should do?
Well, my suggestion would be, since you have the massive good fortune to own a PS5, Astrobot.
Really?
Because the gameplay around that is basically to show off the controller. It's all about utilising the features of the PS5 controller, and it goes through those step by step, I should imagine. So it would be a good one to do, and it's cute and fun, and all about PlayStation, so you'd love it. And it's already pre-installed on the PS5 already, anyway, so you have no excuse. But yes, because I desperately would love to play it, but cannot.
I was thinking about something like Abzu. I was wondering, is Abzu? Do you find that simple?
That's been released on the Play at Home thing today, I think. So you can get that for free. Yes, it is very simple. You've just got the controls to move up and down, and then to boost, swim in, and then to roll. And literally that's it. There's a roll button and a boost button and the direction stick.
The one that I played that was by the same people who made Absu.
That's right. Journey's the one that you played. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, loved
that.
Yeah,
very, very good.
And very fun. It had a good feel for like actual game action, like you were going fast and moving around, but again, simple controls. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've written these down. I've made a list. And then hopefully I'll get my mum playing Metal Gear Solid before the year is out.
But hopefully she'll do a review of all of the games for us.
Yeah, can we get you on streaming? That would be
I'd love to see that.
Oh, I hope she will. I have high hopes. Well, I think that's everything. I think this episode of Game of the System has concluded. Thank you for watching or listening. If you're watching anywhere, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the little notification bell so you know whenever we come on to the channel. We'll always come up with something at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. And this month, because it's got 5 Thursdays in it, you'll have one extra random thing, which I haven't quite worked out what it's going to be. And if you're listening to us, please also like that, give us 5 stars, give us a comment, and share us with your friends. Until next time, we are Gaming the System. Ciao.
Bye.
Yay!
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. If you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.